Okay, this code should look pretty familiar to you. This is the code that you would have needed to have created to complete the upper consolidating task. So right now you should be at the first of the extension tasks where it's asking you to modify your system enough that when you press button A, your LED light will turn on and your light sensor will make the LED matrix on your microbit go up and down. And if you press button B, your LED light will turn off, but also that matrix and the light sensor they won't respond anymore. They're basically froze. So essentially what we're asking you to do is have a system where when you press A, your system is turned on, and when you press B, your system is turned off. And the LED light will indicate if it's on or off. All right, so what we've got here, already half of this is done. If I press button A, then I'm sending a digital signal to my port P0, which is where my LED light's plugged in, and it is turning it on. 1 means on. And when I press B, I'm telling that same port to have a digital signal that is 0, so I'm turning it off. It's also already doing the response. All right, so if I've got my light sensor plugged into P1, it is reading that signal and it is populating my graph with enough of those dots up to a value of 255. So we've done 50% of this without actually having to have done any work at this stage. What we need to do is modify it so that it'll stop doing certain things based upon what was pressed with our buttons. Now, to do this, we have to use variables. So I'm going to go into my variable section and I'm going to create a new variable, and I'm just going to give this a descriptive name which is related to this program. So I'm going to call this one light sensor, and I'll just leave it like that. All right, so light sensor, click OK. Now, as soon as I've made a variable, I have got the option to use the current value in my variable, which is this. I can use that in different parts of my code, or I can set my variable to be a particular value, or I can change it by a certain value, which can be any number of positive numbers. It can also be negative numbers if I want the number to go backwards. So in this situation, I want to use a couple of the set commands. I'm going to drag those out. And in order to store a value of what has been pressed last out of my A and B, I'm going to drag these into here. Now, it would not make sense for both of these to be equaling 0. If I have them both as being 0, then I don't know if I've pressed A or B as my last button. So what I'm going to do, I need to have distinct values in these. To make these easy, I'm just going to use the same ones as the values that we're sending to our port P0. All right, it can be anything, but this is probably the most straightforward way. So when I press A, I'm still sending out my signal to turn the LED light on, but I'm also setting my light sensor to have that same value of 1. And when I press B, I'm sending my signal of 0 to my LED lights. I'm turning it off, and I'm setting the same value of 0 to my light sensor. What that means is later on in my program, I can inspect what's inside my variable, and if it has the value of 1, I know the last button that I pressed was an A. If it's got the value of 0, therefore the last button I pressed must have been a B. And it can't be anything else. We haven't told it to set our light sensor to any other variable or any other value other than 0 or 1. All right, so that's all we need for that bit. We then need to modify this so that it'll stop working if B was the last button that was pressed. Because A is when I want my system powered on and responding, B is when I want everything shut down. So right now it is forever, so it's always responding to whatever is being fed in from port P1, and I don't want that to happen anymore. So what I'm going to do is go into my logic and I'm going to use a conditional statement, just a simple if true then statement, and I'll drag that in there. And then I'm going to drag this code up into it. So we're still testing forever. We're going to do this loop all the time, but now we only want this code here, the plot bar graph and the pause, to only occur if whatever statement in here is true. So right now, well, this is always going to be true because that's all I've got there. What I want to do is I want to test if my light sensor is equal to 1. Because if my light sensor is equal to 1, I know that A was the last button that I pressed. All right. If that's not true, it means B must have been the last button that I pressed, which is when I want everything to shut down and not work anymore. So I'm going to go back into my logic and I'm going to use one of my comparison commands here, drag that in. And at the moment, If 0 equals 0, well, that's true, but that's not actually useful for us. We want to go back into our variables, and we want to know if our light sensor is equal a certain value. Okay, so we want this to only happen if A was the last button that was pressed. And when I go back up here, if button A was pressed, light sensor is 1. So I'm going to change this to 1. What that means now is that it is always going to be running this code. We've literally told it to do this forever, but it is only ever going to be able to run this code if this statement is true. And this statement is only ever true if my button A was the last button that was pressed. So if you can work your way through the logic of that, I've essentially given you the code here that is going to help you, or it will allow you to complete the first of the extending tasks. Your challenge then is going to be figuring out how else you can use variables to achieve the last 2 of the extension tasks. So if you get one of the extra ones done, that's going to be bringing you up into that extending lower range. If you get both of the other extension tasks done, that'll be giving you an extending higher. So good luck with this. I reckon you've got all the information you need now. You just need to look back through your previous tutorials, and that will have all the other bits and pieces in there, and you just need to figure out how to put it all together to achieve the intention of those higher challenges. So good luck.